Well, if Thursday's game was any indication of how week 5 is going to go, then we are in for a heck of a week. Welcome in to Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. I'm Dave Richard. That's Jamey Eisenberg. If you played in a 3-wide receiver league and you looked at Jamey's rankings, you knew to go with Darnell Mooney in your lineup on Thursday night. Nice job. And then joining us from New York, the host of the award winner for Best Sports Podcast. Is that what it is, Adam, from Podcast Awards? Adam Aizer joins us.
Yeah, very well. Not just me, it's all of us and all production crew and everything. So big accomplishment. Thank you.
I'm just trying to butter you guys up as we get into the show today. And we will do starts and sits. We will do player props, but let's talk about this awesome game that we saw. 36-30, Falcons win in overtime. Monster game for both quarterbacks. Monster game for London, Evans, Mooney, even Kyle Pitts. This was Kyle Pitts' best game for fantasy since week 5 of last year. Crazy how kind of rough it's been for him, but maybe he's breaking out. So my first question is about Bijan Robinson. And Jamey, I'm going to ask it to you. He had a season low 10.7 PPR points in this game. He hasn't had 17 plus PPR points in any game this year. We drafted this guy in round 1. Is he still going to be a top 10 running back for you rest of season after this week?
He'll be close. You know, I think it's just going to come down. Like, I'm trying to just think of the position as opposed to him. But
sure,
he's one of the best buy low candidates that you could find because this offense is starting to click. And Kirk Cousins, he was on the Dan Patrick show. I was listening to the interview today. He said he's finally starting to feel comfortable. You know, I mean, clearly it looked like it last night. But he said, you know, he said there was a couple of times where he dropped back and he saw some windows where not that he should have thrown, where he should have run. And he's saying he's feeling more comfortable with his body. And you're seeing it. You're seeing Drake London and how he's performing. You're seeing Kyle Pitts now hopefully open things up. Darnell Mooney's been fantastic. The piece that's missing is clearly Bijan Robinson. And so Tyler Algier is a problem. He's looking very good running the ball, and his involvement in the passing game is a little troubling. But I think once Bijan starts to get better and the offensive line gets healthy, he's been dealing with a shoulder injury, hamstring injury. I think that's probably been a little bit of a factor as well. So if I can get Bijan cheap, I'm absolutely trying to do it.
We will definitely talk about that next week on the shows here on CBS Sports Network and on the aforementioned Fantasy Football Today podcast. Adam, Atlanta plays at Carolina next week. How confident will you be in starting Kyle Pitts, Darnell Mooney, and Kirk Cousins in that game?
So I imagine with Pitts, I won't make any moves. You know, I have Pitts in one league, started him. Yay, I also have Drake London in that league. Let's go. So nice. I'll just probably starting him, but wouldn't be surprised if he has four fantasy points next week. You know, I'm not completely buying into Kyle Pitts. Mooney is, I think even going into this game, I felt he was a little bit underrated. You know, he's getting the targets that I thought Kyle Pitts was going to be getting. But a guy who could get about 7 targets a game, that's a valuable player when bye weeks kick in, and he looks pretty good doing it too. So Mooney is going to be a pretty decent, probably a top 30 receiver next week. Obviously, there's a lot to be determined between now and then. Here's one thing that we need to keep in mind, right? 2 weeks ago, it was the Chicago Bears coming off a pretty good performance from Odunze and from Caleb Williams. They threw over 50 times. The pass volume went all the way down to 23 the next week.
It's true.
This week, it's Green Bay Packers. Let's see what happens with the Packers. Jordan Love threw over 50 passes last week. Let's see if reality sets in a little bit for Dontavian Wicks, for example, or somebody like that. And then we can evaluate the Falcons and say, look, he threw for 500-plus yards. He threw, I think, 58 passes.
Yep.
We have to rein expectations a little bit. So we'll try to learn maybe a little bit of a lesson if we get a normal pass volume game from Jordan Love and calm our hype a little bit on the Falcons.
I totally get that. And moving on to the Bucs, I think everybody knows what to do with Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. Those guys are studs. I might have put the cart before the horse when it came to Bucky Irving. I was very excited about him. I ranked him ahead of Rachaad White in non-PPR. PPR, I still had Rachaad White there. But we saw Rachaad White. He played 2/3 of the snaps, basically, dominated on inside the 5, dominated on third downs. I think he's still going to be the lead running back for Tampa. I'm happy to have Bucky Irving on my bench, but I don't see myself starting him in next week against New Orleans. Not exactly the easiest matchup for those two running backs. There is a ton of news that we need to get to. Injuries across the National Football League. Let's get to it. Let's start with the quarterbacks. There aren't a lot of quarterbacks on the injury report, but the ones that are there, pretty significant for fantasy football. The biggest of which being Anthony Richardson, who looks like he's been limited the first 2 days of practice for the Indianapolis Colts. They're taking on Jacksonville. It looked like he didn't do much on Friday. And as we record this, it's very early afternoon on Friday, Jamey. if it's Joe Flacco, what does that do for all the other pass catchers in Indy? And where would you rank Joe Flacco if he starts for the Colts?
So Flacco will be a low-end number one quarterback. You're right. The Athletic reporting that Joe Flacco took most of the first-team reps. Richardson was taking most of the second-team reps. So probably getting Flacco ready to start, and maybe Richardson will just be a backup in an emergency situation. It clearly makes these guys that much better as pass catchers because Richardson just does not throw with the same level of accuracy, as we're well aware, and is not going to throw as much as Flacco will. I mean, Flacco came in, and Pittman has his best game of the season. Josh Downs has his best game of the season. So Pittman's a number 2 receiver. Downs is a high-end number 3 receiver. If Richardson starts, Pittman's barely a number 3 receiver, and Downs is not somebody I would even touch. So you want to have them roster, clearly, but you're not starting them even in a good matchup just because Richardson does not put them in the same level of consistent production that Flacco will. And we saw the same thing last year. Flacco was much better for all the receivers in Cleveland than Deshaun Watson was. So it's just a great situation for the pass catchers there in Indianapolis.
I love Jordan Love as a top 5 type of fantasy quarterback. I don't think you've got anything to worry about him for week number 5. Aaron Rodgers should start for the New York Jets. I think he's at best a bye-week replacement. Running back injuries, and there are a lot of them, and we're going to show you some of them, and then we're going to show you even more of them because that's how many there are at running back. And Adam, I'm going to ask you, when we bring up the first screen of running backs who are on the injury report, who on this list, one name, worries you the most for week 5?
It would have to be Devin Singletary. If he plays, I'm not going to have any confidence in him, and I don't really want to start Tyrone Tracy. This has all the makings of just a horrible game for the Giants offense with no neighbors, but I expect Etienne, Hunt, Kamara, and Walker to play. Mostert, I don't know, but I'm not starting him anyway. So Singletary is the one that could be out, and there are better options out there. If you could still pick up Cam Akers or Alexander Madison or Trey Sermon, those are better options than Tyrone Tracy Jr. would be, in my opinion. But look, he could have 15 touches. He could have like 4 or 5 catches. He's not the worst option, Tyrone Tracy, if Singletary is out. I just don't really see a lot of yards, and I think the Giants are going to have trouble scoring a touchdown in this game.
Here are the rest of the running back injuries for week 5. Jamie, I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked Adam, and of course Jonathan Taylor is going to be on this list. Which of these running backs, picking only one name, worries you the most?
Well, Taylor, I mean, he didn't practice on Friday, so he's most likely not going to play after missing practice the entire week. We have expected Jalen Warren to be out. Zamir White getting hurt in practice is not a good sign, so he's the one that we don't know about. Joe Mixon has essentially been ruled out already because he didn't practice on Friday. Now, Dameon Pierce did practice, so that's something to keep in mind when you're talking about Cam Akers. Robinson, according to Dan Quinn, is going to be a game-time decision, and Eckler, as you see, has practiced in full on Friday also, so he's been cleared of the concussion protocol. He's going to be good to go. So when you're factoring in all of the replacement options, if Robinson's out, Eckler would be my favorite by a significant margin just because the Commanders' running back has been fantastic, and he would get the majority of touches there. Jeremy McNichols will work in behind Eckler, but would be more of a flex at best. Akers, we saw last week, is a great matchup. Buffalo's really banged up right now, but I think a very sneaky play in deeper leagues is Dare Ogunbowale. Mm-hmm. Bills are terrible in terms of defending pass-catching running backs, and Ogunbowale, 4 catches last week, scored a touchdown. So his outlook would uptick a little bit as well. I agree with Adam. I think Tracy's more of a desperation play, and I think it's going to be a good opportunity for Trey Sermon, but he's just not the best of running backs, as we know. He's bounced around the league. I think Tyler Goodson will get some options as well. All these guys, I think, are best, aside from Eckler's, as flex plays.
And I also want to point out Nick Chubb back at practice for the Cleveland Browns. It doesn't look like he's going to play in week 5, but week 6, week 7, sometime around then, Nick Chubb could be back in the good graces of fantasy managers.
And the other one to keep an eye on, just because it's a Monday night game, is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. You know, if he does return, I don't think that Kareem Hunt goes from what he did to not playing at all, but you wonder if they just use now 3 running backs with Carson Steele probably on the bench, and it's Pirine, and it's Hunt, and it's Clyde. It could be an absolute mess.
Yeah, you want to avoid those messes, obviously, in fantasy football. Speaking of messes, how about some wide receiver injuries? Why am I saying this with a smile? I do not know. But here's the first list of wide receiver injuries, and we got to talk about the guy at the top. It's Devontae Adams.
He's not hurt, by the way.
He really isn't, but the Raiders are saying so because they can't let him get hurt, because then they can't trade him. So, Jamie, if he goes to the Jets, where does he rank rest of season for fantasy managers?
Assuming Garrett Wilson does not go back to the Raiders in trade, Adams is going to be in the 15 to 20 range, and Wilson is probably 23 to 28, as a low-end number 2, high-end number 3 receiver. I mean, clearly Adams going to be reunited with Aaron Rodgers puts him still in the starting range, but sharing the field with Wilson and the way that this passing offenses look, it's not all of a sudden Davante Adams back as a top 3 receiver. I would prefer to not see him go to the Jets. I'd prefer to see him go to Buffalo, especially with Khalil Shakir now being ruled out with an ankle injury. The Chiefs obviously make a lot more sense for his fantasy outlook in terms of high-end potential. Going to a place where there's another established receiver, and the 2 places that he listed as his favorite destinations have established number 1 receivers. Adams might be better than them, but you don't want to see those guys get ruined, meaning Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave.
Other names on this list, Tank Dell is expected to play, as is Deontay Johnson. We're still waiting a couple more weeks on Cooper Kupp. Let's take a look at more wide receiver injuries. Adam, there's some names on this list I think we feel good about them playing. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett up there. But Malik Neighbors being out, Rashee Rice going on IR, Khalil Shakir's out, Christian Watson's not expected to play. Off the top of your head, are there wide receivers that you can think of, maybe even on those teams, that you would consider starting in their place?
Yeah, I feel like Curtis Samuel would probably be a guy to pick up that could replace maybe 80% of Khalil Shakir. Obviously, Shakir and Keon Coleman are so different that I don't know that it really benefits Coleman. The targets should go up, but I think Kincaid would move up in the rankings, and maybe Samuel if you're desperate. Wan'Dale Robinson is only 54% rostered, so I really think he's a borderline must start. And by the way, you look at Christian Watson being out and Romeo Doubs might be out. If you picked up Ontavian Wicks, you better be starting Ontavian Wicks. So he's way ahead of Wan'Dale Robinson. But Wan'Dale should be a top 36 wide receiver. I have a hard time seeing Wan'Dale getting less than 5 catches. I think he could have close to 10 catches. That's a lot, I know, but you could see a scenario where the Giants are throwing a lot and throwing a lot to him. And if you're in a 14-team league or deeper, Darius Slayton. I gave this ridiculous stat to Dave on the podcast today. The last 3 games Darius Slayton played without Malik Neighbors, he scored a touchdown in every game. He scored more than 17 fantasy points. That was the last 3 games of the 2023 season. I didn't even remember him doing that. I was just looking at the game log. So he's got some potential. He could always hit on a big play. But Wan'Dale would really be the prize if we were just looking at that list there.
Don't forget about Xavier Worthy. I mean, obviously no Rice. We'll see what else they do in terms of Juju Smith-Schuster and Justin Watson. And I know Mahomes said, Noah Gray from a tight end perspective. But Worthy, this is his opportunity. He hasn't had more than 4 targets in a game. But they need him, and we'll see how he does, in a tough matchup against Saints.
Let's move to the tight end injuries, and there is some movement here that's positive for fantasy managers. Evan Ingram is limited. It sounds like he does have a chance to play for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Taysom Hill does have a rib fracture. We will see about his availability for Week 5. But the 2 names, Jamie, that are here that matter the most to fantasy managers, George Kittle and Trey McBride. It seems like good news for Trey McBride, bad news for George Kittle. Where do you have McBride ranked this week?
Well, McBride's a top 5 tight end, and he's been cleared, so he's good to go. Tough matchup against San Francisco, but the last time these 2 teams met, he had 10 catches over 100 yards. Different situation because of how Kyler Murray's been struggling a little bit, but that game was with Kyler, so we'll see how San Francisco looks. I was just checking. Evan Ingram's a game-time decision, according to Doug Peterson, so trending in the right direction. We'll see exactly what his practice status is, and David Njoku did return to practice on Friday after sitting out on Thursday, but that was the plan, was for him to practice Wednesday, sit out Thursday, practice Friday. So we'll see if he's able to return. Look, we need players at this position. Yeah. Thankfully, Kyle Pitts performed like he did. The window's now open for TJ Hawkinson. He actually practiced on Friday, but the Vikings, according to at least the NFL Network, they may give him the full 3 weeks to get back. I don't know if that includes the bye week, which they have next week in terms of the 3-week window. Not necessarily for him to return, just in terms of his health, because he does get the 3 games to come back. So it's this week and then basically a month in terms of when they could activate TJ Hawkinson. But hopefully it's just the 3 weeks, this week, next week, week after, and then Hawkinson's back out there. But the tight end position getting a little bit healthier. Ingram and Njoku are tough to trust, but when you're still talking about Brenton Strange, clearly that's a guy to replace.
He'll fly right out the window.
When you're talking about like Tyler Conklin and Eric All and Mike Gesicki and Cole Kmet, these guys are certainly better in terms of what their upside could be. You just have to hope that it's not a shake the rust off game, because at least for Ingram and Njoku, it's been 2+ weeks where they've been out.
CBSSports.com will have updated injury statuses for all the players on your screen, so be sure to double check with them before your games kick off on Sunday. Before we go to break, let's answer a post on X. Adam, this one's coming to you. It's from Kyle. He traded Garrett Wilson and Ramondre Stevenson for A.J. Brown. Did he win the trade?
This could be one where both sides win, but I would rather have the A.J. Brown side. So I'm going to give this a B-, a slight win.
When we come back, Jamey Eisenberg, start of the week, along with starts and sits at quarterback and running back. Do not go anywhere. Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM. How fast does NFL news run? During the break, we learned Jonathan Taylor out for the Indianapolis Colts for their Week 5 matchup against Jacksonville. Trey Sermon would be his replacement, but not necessarily the best guy that you could get off the waiver wire to use in place of Taylor. Let's talk about quarterbacks to start and sit in week number 5. And Jamey, your start of the week is Brock Purdy. Why do you love him so much?
Well, he's due. Second in the NFL in passing yards, and he's just had some unlucky touchdown scenarios. So only 5 touchdowns on the season, and his only big game so far came when he was missing 2 of his top pass catchers when George Kittle and Deebo Samuel were out. That was against the Rams in Week 3. Jerry Rice, Jawan Jennings took over that game. So we'll see what happens now that everybody's healthy and fully, 100% ready to go. But this Cardinals matchup has been great for him. 23 or more fantasy points in 3 straight games against them. He's averaging 27 fantasy points in his 3 games against the Cardinals. And they've been bad against 2 of 4 quarterbacks so far this season. Really bad, 26 or more points to 2 of 4 of their opponents. So I think Purdy's due, coming back home. I think he's going to have a big game. So top 6 quarterback for me this week.
I agree with you on that. And I want you to keep Purdy's name in mind. I think you're going to say that you would start him ahead of these 3 quarterbacks. These are quarterbacks that I'm getting asked a lot about. I'm sure you guys are too. Would you start them, and how would you rank them in week number 5? It's Sam Darnold, Justin Fields, and Geno Smith. Jamey, what's your order for these 3?
Fields, Smith, Darnold.
And you would definitely take them all behind Brock Purdy.
Yep.
Adam, what's your order?
Very different. I got Sam Darnold, Geno Smith, Justin Fields.
Interesting. So why is Fields at the head of the class for you, Jamey?
Well, the Cowboys are down their top 2 pass rushers with Micah Parsons dealing with an ankle injury and DeMarcus Lawrence on IR with the foot injury. And Fields, I think, is starting to click for Arthur Smith. He said that they're feeling a little bit more comfortable with him making plays. It's just a good matchup, and I think what we're going to see from him is really the Steelers are going to have the ball a lot. I think they're going to run a ton, but the running game has been a little suspect. So what we saw from Fields the last 2 weeks, he's been throwing the ball a little bit better. You saw the game 2 weeks ago, over 20 fantasy points. Last week, over 30 fantasy points. I don't think he gets there, but I think 20 to 22 points is well within reason. I think it's just a little bit safer than Darnold taking on a good Jets defense, not a great Jets defense. And also in terms of Smith, who knows how much he's going to actually have to throw. He's still searching for his first game with multiple passing touchdowns. I do think he gets it against the Giants, but this could be a huge Ken Walker game with just how much Seattle will have the ball against that inept Giants offense.
Adam, why Darnold?
He's just playing really well. He's throwing a ton of touchdowns, and he's doing all this. He hasn't even thrown 30 passes yet. He's throwing 28 passes, 26 passes. If he gets a game where he actually throws 35 or 40 times, he still has Justin Jefferson. I thought the move that Jordan Addison made on his touchdown catch was insane. I mean, the guy is so fast. He's a real weapon. I just love the players that he's throwing to. I like all these guys, and I think Fields has the most upside because of the rushing. But it's almost like Baker Mayfield last night. I thought he was playing so well. I almost put Joe Burrow in. And I was like, I'm just going to leave Baker Mayfield in there. It's kind of how I feel about Purdy, about Sam Darnold, not quite to that degree, but he's playing too well right now, throwing too many touchdowns, and he's my pick.
Let's take a look at what the audience voted for. We put out a Twitter poll asking, who would you start from these 3 quarterbacks? And the answer is Geno Smith. They disagree with both of you. And for the record, me too. I actually like Justin Fields at the top of the list, but it's a close call between Geno Smith and Justin Fields. Very interesting. I think people like that matchup against the Giants, and they expect Geno Smith to go off, but I don't think even Geno Smith can do what he did in week number 4. Let's move on to running backs. I'm going to give you 3 running backs to name. I want you to rank them for me. It's Najee Harris, Ramondre Stevenson, and Javonte Williams. Adam, how do you rank them?
I go Najee 1, Ramondre Stevenson 2, and Javonte Williams 3. Najee with a great opportunity. If Patterson and Warren are out, I think he'll get more catches than we're used to seeing him get, and hopefully he can finally run the ball well against a beatable run defense.
Jamey, what's your order?
Najee at the top also. I go Javonte over Ramondre. It's a great matchup for Javonte as well, getting a season-high 16 carries last week. The Raiders have been bad against every starting running back that they've faced so far this season, and I think Javonte keeps that going. I do like the fact that there's now a third guy missing from the Broncos because they've tried to use a third guy, certainly each of the last 2 weeks with Tyler Bidet, but he just hasn't gotten the job done now that he's hurt. Certainly not going to get the job done now that he's hurt. I don't think Savon Ahmed comes off the street and becomes that third guy. Estime is still dealing with his injury. He is on IR. So I think we'll see Javonte Williams, Jaleel McLaughlin, with Javonte getting, again, 15-plus carries, hopefully close to 20 total touches. And I think this Raiders defense is beatable. Ramondre makes me a little nervous with the situation that Gerard Mayo brought up this week in terms of the role that he'll have. I don't think he's getting completely benched. He never said bench. He said just lose his starting job. So Gibson's a great flex play for this week. Ramondre's still a number 2 running back. He was originally going to be my start of the week. That's how much I like the matchup against the Dolphins. It's fantastic. Sure. But we just don't know what the Patriots are going to do. And I think Gerard Mayo is actually going to stand by his word here because he keeps preaching ball security is job security. And he said, I can't continue to allow Ramondre to fumble and not make an example out of him was basically the gist of the quote. And so who knows if Ramondre loses 5 touches, 10 touches. If Gibson gets off to a hot start, we may not see Ramondre doing the same things that he should be doing against this Dolphins defense.
Very quickly, where does DeAndre Swift rank compared to these 3 running backs? Is he ahead of them?
Better than all of them.
Okay, Adam, do you agree?
No, I don't. I take Najee over him. I was going to say Ramondre, but what Jamie just said about that quote, I'll put Swift ahead of Ramondre.
Yeah, definitely about that. Ramondre makes me nervous as well. Let's see the Twitter results. See who you guys chose as your favorite running back, and it's Najee by a considerable margin, 51% of the vote. I've got 3 more running backs to show you. You tell me how you would rank them. It's Jerome Ford of the Browns. Sounds like his clock is ticking on being the starter there. Kareem Hunt, maybe his clock is just beginning to tick in Kansas City. And Zach Moss caught a touchdown last week. Jamie, how do you rank these 3 running backs?
Ford, Hunt, Moss.
Why Ford at the top?
As long as Nick Chubb is not there, the matchup is fantastic for him against the Commanders. And he's been good in 2 of 4 games. The receptions have been fantastic for him, coming off a 7-catch game. I just think as long as there's no Nick Chubb playing this week, his role feels a little bit safer. I mean, we saw Chase Brown clearly come on last week. Tough matchup against the Ravens for both Moss and Brown. And then when you're looking at Kareem Hunt, it could be a mess. And this Saints run defense has been really good. So if Clyde is active, which it sounds like it's going to be the case, we don't know if Carson Steele is going to still get touches. I don't think 4 guys will play, but Samaje Perine will be in the mix also. I just feel like Ford's ceiling is much higher than the other 2.
Adam, are you rolling with Ford?
I am. This was the easiest one, at least in terms of who to put first. I go Ford 1, then Zach Moss, and then Kareem Hunt.
Moss makes me nervous for the exact same reasons. I don't know how much work he'll get. Maybe he'll catch a bunch of passes and that'll salvage his stat line, but that Ravens run defense is really, really good. Let's take a look at how you guys saw these 3 running backs. And you like Jerome Ford the best too. This was a slam dunk. Across the board, Jerome Ford, the start over Kareem Hunt and Zach Moss. We've got a Twitter question to answer here before we go to break. And it's from Dylan. 12 teams, no PPR. He's got Charbonnet on the bench, along with a bunch of other guys who are still available. Which of the 4 is the best bench stash for mid to late season production, Adam?
This all depends on who gets injured. I guess I would just take Braylon Allen because he's got a role bigger than Charbonnet's and just as much upside as Charbonnet if the starter gets hurt.
The only thing to keep in mind, though, and I agree with you, it's Braylon Allen, is if we're talking injuries, Charbonnet's backfield mate has already been banged up and still on the injury report with an oblique problem. So you saw what he could do. So if you're just counting on injury, you might just want to keep Charbonnet. But yes, Braylon Allen is certainly the highest ceiling of that bunch if Breece Hall were to miss any time.
Let's rank some wide receivers. We'll do that when we come back here on FFT. Let's get those lineups right for week number 5. Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM. This segment, nothing but wide receivers. We're going to rank a bunch of them. We're going to tell you who we want to start, who we want to sit, and help you set your lineups for this crucial week 5 in your fantasy football leagues. Let's start with these 3 wide receivers. Non-obvious starts. We're not going to tell you to start Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase. That's obvious stuff. And believe it or not, Brandon Ayuk, not an obvious must-start fantasy wide receiver. Or I think he's not. We'll see what the guys say. But Ayuk versus T. Higgins versus Garrett Wilson. Jamie, who's your favorite and who's your least favorite of the 3?
I like all 3. I think all 3 have a chance to play well this week. Wilson, probably his easiest matchup of the season. Higgins has a great history against Baltimore. They're going to be throwing a lot, and I think we'll see Ayuk finally break through that 50-yard receiving mark that's been tough for him to overcome in the 4 games. But I would go Wilson, Higgins, Ayuk. I think they all have top 20 upside.
That's the same order I have them in. Adam, what's your order?
Well, I'm pretty sure you guys copied my paper. I have the same order.
Oh, so it's a kiss of death. Great.
So,
yeah, exactly.
I think it's worth talking about Garrett Wilson because he also has not had a ton of yardage. He seems to be a little touchdown dependent. Where is he a top 15 receiver, Jamey? Top 20? Where do you have him?
He's top 20. I mean, again, he's got to show something, and we got to see Aaron Rodgers, who's got some knee soreness that he apparently is playing through. The offensive line is not as stout as we thought it was going to be, especially with Moses not playing. And this Vikings defense, they're going to come after him. But there should be some opportunities, as we just saw. The Packers made clearly a lot of plays in the second half from their receiving core, with Dontavian Wicks catching 2 touchdowns and Jaden Reed having a big day. So I think if Aaron Rodgers can hold up and the protection can keep him upright for the majority of the game, probably in the second half, we'll see Wilson have his best game to date.
And he's still getting plenty of targets from Aaron Rodgers. Adam, the Jaguars receivers have been a lot of fun lately. Christian Kirk, Brian Thomas Jr., where do they rank compared to these 3 guys, Ayuk, Higgins, Wilson?
Man, I love Brian Thomas Jr., but not as much as Garrett Wilson. I'm going to try to, I think, play it a little safe there. So I'm going to go Garrett Wilson, Brian Thomas Jr., Christian Kirk, who's also been really good the last 2 weeks, then Higgins, then Ayuk.
Totally get it. I really like Brian Thomas Jr., though. I think he's done great. 9 targets each of the last 2 games, and an awesome matchup against Indianapolis. I think Jacksonville actually figures things out this week and get their first win of the season. Let's take a look at the Twitter results. Who do you guys like among the 3 wide receivers? Whoa, it's Brandon Ayuk at 45%. Garrett Wilson's 3rd. Jamey, any reaction to this?
I think people just may be hoping that this is the Ayuk week. Again, great history against the Cardinals. He's got 3 touchdowns in his last 5 games against Arizona. He's due. He's just absolutely due, and this is hopefully the week that it happens. The Cardinals defense is missing 3 guys, so we'll see how that matters in terms of Arizona's defense, but they just have not been good. So this is a big-time week for Brock Purdy, a big-time week for Ayuk.
A lot of injuries at wide receiver, and 4 teams are on bye in week number 5. So we should talk about some wide receivers that are bye week replacements, flex options. And here's 3 of them coming at you right now. Wan'Dale Robinson of the Giants, Rashid Shaheed. Man, he's been hot since the start of the season for the New Orleans Saints. And Dontavian Wicks came on strong for Green Bay last week. Adam, how do you rank these 3 receivers? Robinson, Shaheed, and Wicks.
Shaheed's just had a really good year, and he had 1 game where he had 0 catches. But in that game, he kind of sort of dropped 2 potential big plays, maybe 1 touchdown there. So I go Shaheed number 1, even though it is a very tough matchup, followed by Dontavian Wicks and Wan'Dale Robinson. An easy 3rd for me, because I feel like he has maybe the highest floor, but definitely the lowest ceiling. And I just don't think he's going to win you your week. So for me, it's Shaheed, Wicks, and Wan'Dale.
Hey, Jamey, do you see it the same way?
No, Wan'Dale's first for me in PPR. Unless Romeo Doubs is ruled out, then I'll take Wicks over Robinson. I don't necessarily think that his ceiling is not that high in PPR, because you said it, Adam, he could have 10 catches. And so if you get 10 for 50, 10 for 60, 10 for 80, maybe find the end zone. I don't know if those other guys are catching as many passes as Wan'Dale Robinson is. So half PPR, non-PPR, I'll take those other 2 guys over Wan'Dale. Full PPR, though, I agree. This could be a 15-catch game for me. He had 11 catches last week on 14 targets. Wouldn't be a huge shock given how Malik Neighbors not being there.
And let's just confuse everybody at home even more. I like Dontavian Wicks, the best of the 3. 2 touchdowns last week. He should have had a 3rd. He had 1 bounce off his chest. He's a downfield threat without Christian Watson on the field. We've seen it before from the Packers. And what if the game with the Rams actually is high scoring? The Packers defense isn't that good. Rams can put up some points, and we could see Jordan Love go back to throwing the ball 35 plus times. Hey, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, where do those guys fit in compared to these 3 wide receivers, Jamey?
Hill is still ahead of all of them, just barely, and Waddle is behind all of them.
So it's like a dolphin sandwich, sort of, where you've got Tyreek Hill.
A lot of other stuff in between, but yes.
Yeah. It's a messy sandwich. I do think Tyreek Hill has a chance to bounce back a little bit this week, but we're talking about Robinson, Shaheed, and Wicks, and let's see what you guys at home thought. Who's the best receiver of the group? It's Dontavian Wicks by a wide margin. I feel like recency bias is coming into play here. Maybe just a little bit ahead of Wan'Dale Robinson and ahead of Rashid Shaheed. But, Shaheed had 16 PPR points last week. I don't understand why people would run away from him.
Chiefs don't give up big plays down the field, so you got to make sure that he's getting those 8 catches like we saw last week, and that's just hard to bank on for someone who just doesn't do that consistently.
No, but I did like the A dot for him last week, and I wonder if that's something that can continue. I don't know if it necessarily will in the case of Rashid Shaheed. I've got 3 more wide receivers. Let's talk about them. Jordan Addison of the Vikings taking on the Jets. Xavier Legette of the Carolina Panthers, he's their rookie, and Jackson Smith-Njigba, who had a pretty good game last week. Adam, how would you rank these 3 wide receivers?
Oh, honestly, with 3 question marks, but my rankings right now are Addison, JSN, and Xavier Legette. I don't really want to start JSN. He's only been really good once, and he's been usable twice, and 44 and 52 pass attempts in those two games, something like that for Geno Smith. I see a much different game script this week. Addison, I just think the talent is so good. I think the snap count, the snap share goes up this week. And the Jets are beatable because it's not like Sauce Gardner is going to shadow Jordan Addison or anything like that. So there'll be opportunities for him. And then Leggett, actually pretty interesting to me. Definitely want to stash him. Just a little nervous to go back. They have the toughest matchup that they've had this year. So I'm going to be a little bit cautious with him.
Jamie, who's your fave?
I'm going to lean toward targets, and I still think JSN gets the most targets of this group. Leggett's certainly going to be in the conversation after a 10-target game last week, and they're probably chasing points against the Bears if the Bears' offense does show up against the Panthers' defense. But Leggett would be third. I think you look at Addison. He's going to be a touchdown-dependent receiver so far. He's got 2 games, one he left early, but still 4 targets in each of those 2 games. And Adam mentioned that Sam Darnold's been fantastic. He hasn't had to throw that many times. I don't know if he has to throw this week that much against the Jets. So the target share for me is still a little bit of a problem for Addison right now.
Interesting. All right, let's answer a tweet from our audience to see if they've got a question that we can answer for them. Do we have a question from the audience?
You got to show the Twitter poll first.
No, we don't have a Twitter poll for this one.
Oh, that sucks.
No, and we don't have a tweet either. All right, it's time to get our minds right and to get ready for player props. Adam has player props set up. Jamie and I have to guess on what the number is and whether they'll be higher or lower. You don't want to go anywhere here on Fantasy Football Today.
Welcome back. It's Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. How did we do last week? Did we do that bad, Dave?
Well, I mean, I went 2-3, and I was the best of the bunch. So I guess the answer to that question is 1, yes, and 2, please get this off of our screen. We do not want to relive this history.
All right, you guys are going to have to do better this week. So let's see how we do here. I'm filling in for Kate. I'm going to be Katie in this segment. All right, let's get those whiteboards out. I'm looking for Brian Thomas Jr.'s receiving yards. Brian Thomas Jr.'s receiving yards against the Colts. Let's see, and then what do I do while they're just, do I like tell a story?
You have to filibuster a little bit.
Dave's ready. I see 2. There's 72, 88. His receiving prop is 50.5 receiving yards.
Oh, my goodness.
Over.
We are taking the over big time on that. Listen, Indianapolis's pass defense has been brutal pretty much all season long. Their pass rush is also still an issue right now. I kind of like Trevor Lawrence as a start this week at quarterback. I moved him into my top 12, believe it or not. I would start him over Kyler Murray. I know that sounds crazy, but I think the Jaguars get right against the Colts this week. And the fact that Joe Flacco's at quarterback, man, that just makes me think that this could be a high-scoring shootout. I like those kinds of games.
I would start Flacco and Lawrence over Dak and Kyler Murray.
Ooh.
I like Kyler. You know, Jamie, I was saying Kyler Murray, career high in ADOT, yet a career high in completion percentage, career high in touchdown rate. He had one other thing that was really good. The only thing, he's throwing 27 passes a game. I think things are going to change, and he's on pace for over 600 rushing yards. But yeah, okay.
A good buy low candidate, but his history against the 49ers is terrible.
Fair enough. Okay, let's go to our next one. There is one player matchup that is going to decide everything for me and Dave. I took Amari Cooper. He took Terry McLaurin. I like Amari Cooper this week. What is his receiving yards prop, guys? Amari Cooper receiving yards against the Commanders.
It is the Commanders. I did think Washington's defense played better last week.
I'm the one who has the filibuster, right?
All right, then you go filibuster away, Adam.
90. Oh, I shouldn't say for Jamie. 96 for Jamie. Let's see what Dave's got. 67. It's 49.5.
Way over.
Here's the thing. Like, I'm gonna pick all. We're all gonna be on the same page on all of these, but I think I've got some good player props. Amari Cooper, 49.5 receiving yards. We all like the over. Jamie, what'd you have? 96. Dave, you had in the 70s.
67.
Yeah, 67. I'm gonna be like around 80. So yeah, hit Smatt. Jamie, who do you like better, McLaurin or Cooper?
Cooper.
I get it. I like the quarterback better for McLaurin, and I know the matchup is tougher, but I still think, Jaden Daniels is better than Deshaun Watson. So what? Want to fight about it? Look, I think that Amari Cooper should have had a touchdown last week. It was a real ticky-tack holding call that brought it back, and if he had had that, we wouldn't have any questions about Amari Cooper this week. I still think he can be good. I just think McLaurin can be better.
McLaurin's targets need to be up a little bit. I just don't think that's where Cooper wins. He's been 9 targets or more in every game this season.
All right, let's go to one of the hottest receivers in football, Deontay Johnson. Big challenge against the Bears. Receiving yards, over under for Deontay Johnson. What do you guys got here? What are you thinking?
I think he's going to continue to get double-digit targets. I think he's going to let us down a little bit here, though.
Oh, but you still have 77 and 80 yards. That's pretty good. His prop is 59.5.
Tough matchup.
It is, yeah.
But
How many?
Good luck sitting him.
Only 3 receivers have gone over that. Nico Collins, Tutu Atwell, and Jordan Whittington with 62 yards. But I like the over. I mean, I guess I'm bullish on these guys. I like the over for Deontay's receiving yards, and you guys do too.
Well, it's such a low number that you can just easily see it in your mind's eye that he could get that by the end of the third quarter.
I don't think he's going 8 for 33.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
He's not going to pull a Wandale.
Let's get a running back here. How about Josh Jacobs rushing yards against the Rams?
Oh, should be big.
I agree. Which means it's not going to be, but whatever. Here, I'm going bold. He's going to get there. Triple digits.
86. Okay, yeah, you guys were over. 65.5.
When do you pick a tough one?
I know, that's what I'm saying. It's like, was I supposed to pick tough ones, or was I supposed to pick one?
Pick ones that everybody can, get a little extra money for the holidays with.
That's what I'm talking about. I think my next one's tougher, but at the same time, look, we're not going to go 4-0 on these props, right? We're just not. They're smarter than we are. They've got the algorithms, whatever it is.
Well, you're not asking us to go guess the number. You're asking us just to go over or under. So
right.
It's not like we're recreating the wheel here.
And I don't think it's going to be a game script like last week for Green Bay, where they were down by 3+ scores by the second quarter, and they had to start throwing the ball more. I don't think that's going to be that.
DeAndre Swift just ran through a defense, and it's this defense.
Yes. So if he can do it, Jacobs can do it. 100 yards for Josh Jacobs.
We're over for Brian Thomas, over for Amari Cooper, over for Deontay Johnson. Josh Jacobs, we like the over on his rushing yards. All right, last one here. Geno Smith passing yards. He leads the NFL, or going into week 5, led the NFL in passing yards. He faces the undermanned New York Giants. Undermanned a little bit defensively, but mostly offensively here. Geno Smith. Look at this. Okay, it's 247.5.
Oh, I love this under. I love it so much.
This is a like 200, 175 to 200, 3 touchdown day for Geno. He's going to get his first multiple touchdown game.
Well, first of all, he did run for a touchdown while throwing
multiple passing touchdowns.
Multiple passing touchdowns. I think he can get 2. 3 makes me a little bit nervous, but I definitely don't see the Giants giving Seattle a fight. Seattle's defense is getting healthy, by the way. So the Giants falling apart. Seattle's defense getting stronger. I don't know how much Geno will have to do. This is a terrific under.
And it was a tough start-sit call. I don't have any Geno Smith, but just when we were talking about the game this morning, it was tough. All right, let's because he is playing very well, but just probably won't have to throw that much. Let's take a look at a tweet or an X.
Oh,
Kareem
what's up,
Hunt hey Walter. Kareem Hunt or Brian Thomas Jr. in full PPR, guys.
You got 2 things at play here. One, we don't know what the Chiefs' backfield is going to completely look like if anybody else is going to join Kareem Hunt, meaning Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and that's a Monday night game, so it's easy Brian Thomas for me.
I agree. BTJ all the way.
All right, and now we have to spend a week thinking about, was this segment terrible? Should Adam have picked tougher props?
No.
Maybe. But
No.
Katie will do better next week.
No,
right,
I love Katie, but anything's better than Kyle Juszczyk receiving yards.
But that's tough. That makes you think.
Yeah, of course.
Adam didn't make us think
Yeah,
today.
that's true. Adam didn't make us think. That's usual for Adam, though.
Honestly, let's see how smart we are, because we are adamant about all 5 of these. We'll see how good we are. All right, we'll be back with your tweets on Fantasy Football Today to finish things up.
Closing up shop here on FFT, and unlike Devontae Adams with the Raiders, we're loyal to you. Let's help you with your questions heading into Week 5. Jamie, Devin wants to know, Moss or Javonte in PPR? If he was watching earlier, he'd already have the answer.
I'm going to go with Javonte. It's close, but I just don't like the matchup for the Bengals running backs against the Ravens.
I haven't been a Javonte fan for a long time, but this week I am. I agree with you. Adam, this post is for you. Let's see who's checking in with Ask FFT. It's Rocco, full PPR. He wants to trade Hawkinson and Trey Tucker for Brandon Ayuk. What do you think about that trade, Adam?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'd love to trade Hawkinson and Wan'Dale Robinson for Garrett Wilson. Yeah, of course you make this trade. This is a fantastic trade. Do it immediately.
I don't even know why people ask sometimes, but we're here to help anyway. Thank you, Rocco, for the post. Let's go on to the next one. It's from KC, Jamie. Deontay Johnson, DJ Moore, Dontavian Wicks, Brian Thomas Jr. You can only start 2.
Yeah, Deontay Johnson and Brian Thomas would be the 2 for me. I like DJ Moore in the revenge game, and I like Dontavian Wicks coming off what he did without Christian Watson there. But Johnson's playing too well, and Thomas has got 18 targets last 2 weeks.
Does that change if it's non-PPR?
Nope.
You like it either way? Okay, that's fine with me. Looks good to me too as well. Next question, please. From Matt. This is a guillotine league, Adam. Pick 2 of these guys. Bucky Irving's already played. So it's down to Trey Sermon, Cortland Sutton. Let's make this for the rest of the season. You can only keep 2 of these guys rest of season. I think that's pretty easy too, right? You'd throw Sermon back and keep Irving and Sutton.
Yeah. Can I start Thanks this week if I already started Bucky Irving? Yeah, Sermon would be the one to go.
I still think Irving is worth stashing. Just don't get excited about starting him. Next question.
I like that they asked Scott White a question. That was good.
It's from Schultze. Hey, guys, stupid question. We'll be the judge of that. Chris Godwin over Cook in PPR, mostly because of the Houston defense, or what? So Godwin's already played.
The timeliness of these questions are fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. How about that? So, listen, I don't mind James Cook against the Texans defense. Where do you have him ranked this week, Jamie?
He's top 10. I mean, he's going to be needed in the passing game without Shakir there. So hopefully he steps up and has a big game.
Kind of is a stupid question if you're asking this on a Friday after Chris Godwin played. Do we have another question?
I'm going to guess we probably just chose the questions a little late.
Yeah, probably. See, now they're holding us up because we don't know.
Should I start Baker Mayfield or Joe Burrow?
Yeah,
I'll take Kirk Cousins.
I'll take Kirk Cousins over everybody. Half PPR, Lockett or Slayton. Neighbors isn't expected to go. Finally, a timely question, Adam.
That's a good question. I would go with Tyler Lockett.
I'm going to go Slayton for me.
I kind of like Slayton, too. I think the game script will favor him a little bit. I don't know if either of these guys can get you north of like 12 PPR points, but I think Slayton's got a better chance to do it than Tyler Lockett. Do we have another question? Hello? Any other questions? We don't have any other questions. It is a big time week number 5. Adam, I'm going to ask you, the game you're looking forward to the most this week is what?
Do I have to cue the music? I am looking forward to Indianapolis at Jacksonville. You know, we watched the tape of Trevor Lawrence. This guy is leaving so much production on the field. He could have had another 90 yards and 2 touchdowns if he had delivered good balls to Christian Kirk on a 59-yard catch, or what should have been, and Brian Thomas about 28 yards. And those plays are there, and they're going to be there. I mean, not specifically those, but plays are going to be there for Trevor Lawrence to make against a terrible defense. These 2 defenses are the defenses that we like to pick on as fantasy managers. They're playing each other. It could be a very high game and a get-right game for a lot of players. So I don't want to start Lawrence, but I might have to. But I definitely want to start Brian Thomas and Christian Kirk. And if Flacco plays, man, Josh Downs, I wish I could pick him up. I missed my chance there. Pittman is almost a must start. This is a really good game.
Jamie, your favorite game of this week?
Oh, it's Ravens-Bills. You know, I want to see Josh Allen bounce back after that disappointing performance. He doesn't have arguably his best receiver, but maybe they lose and they get a little aggressive in trade and go get Devontae Adams. They'll offer a little bit more than the Raiders are asking for just to guarantee themselves the chance at one of the top-tier players. And Baltimore's just been fantastic. I would like to see, however, Buffalo get a lead and have Lamar Jackson have to throw, not just the Derrick Henry show.
What is that? Isn't Buffalo playing Houston?
I'm sorry, Buffalo's playing Houston. I want to see.
Yeah, what was back to last week?
God, went back a week.
Jamie was in charge of the tweets this week, everybody.
Apparently.
Thank you for watching. We'll see you Sunday, 9 a.m. on YouTube to answer your fantasy questions.
Too long of a week.